Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajakachaja Stutarasati Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajakachaja Stutarasati Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shaimakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Neelachala Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Sarad Bihari Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Jamunamai Gangamai Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Hari Ram Sankirtan Ki Jai Sankirtan Jagna Ki Jai Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Go Premanandi Hari Bol all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna.
all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to Sri Guru Sri Gauranga Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 11, Text 33 and 34. So I'll read the Sanskrit 3 times and then you can repeat. Gopyo Rudharata Nutna Kucha Kunkuma Kantaya Krishna Lila Jagu Pritya Nishka Kantya Suvasasa Gopyo Rudharata Nutna Kucha Kunkuma Kantaya Krishna Lila Jagu Pritya Nishka Kantya Suvasasa Gopyo Rudharata Nutna Kucha Kunkuma Kantaya Krishna Lila Jagu Pritya Nishka Kantya Suvasasa. Someone else can try?
33.
Anyone else?
Okay, I will try.
Haribol Kavaya Prabhu.
Haribol. Gopya Ruda Ratha Nutta Kucha Kumkum Kantayah Krishna Lila Jaguh Pritya निष्कण्ठय सुवाससः
गोप्योरूढरथानोत्ना कुचकुङ्कुमकान्तयः कृष्णलीलाजगुप्रीत्या निष्ककण्ठयः सुवासः
गोप्यो रुद्ररथारुणुता कुचकुङ्कुमकतया कृष्णलीला जगुप्रीत्या निष्कान्त्या श्रुवासवससा
Gopyarudharatarutna Kucha Kunkumakaya Krishna Lila Jagu Pritya Nishka Kantyaya Subhashaha.
Okay.
गोप्योरुडरथानुत्ना कूचकुङ्कुं कान्तयः कृष्णलीला जगुप्रीत्या निष्कण्ठय सुवाससः
गोप्यो रुधारथा नूतना ऊचा कुङ्कुमकान्तया कृष्णलीला जगुप्रीत्या निष्काकण्ठ्या सुवासः
गोप्यरूढा रथानूत्ना कुचकुङ्कुमकान्तया कृष्णलीला जगुप्रीत्या निष्काकान्त्या सुवाससः.
Very nice. Gopya, all the cowherd women, Rudha, Ratha, while riding on the bullock carts, Nutna, Kucha, Kunkuma, Kantaya. Their bodies, especially their breasts, were decorated with fresh kunkuma. Krishna Lilaha, the pastimes of Krishna. Jagu, they chanted Pritya with great pleasure. Nishka Kantya, decorated with lockets on their necks. Suvasasa, very well dressed. Translation. The cowherd women riding on the bullock carts were dressed very nicely with excellent garments, and their bodies, especially their breasts, were decorated with fresh kumkuma powder. As they rode, they began to chant with great pleasure the pastimes of Krishna. So I'll just read the next one and then purport. Tata Yashoda Rohinyav Ekam Sakatam Ashtite Rejatu Krishna Ramabhyam Tatkata Shravanotsuke Tata Yashoda Rohinya Ekam Sakatam Astite Rejatu Krishna Ramabhyam Tatkata Shravanotsuke Tata Yashoda Rohinyav Ekam Sakatam Astite Rejatu Krishna Ramabhyam Tat Kata Shravanoksuke Tata, as well as Yashoda Rohinya, both Mother Yashoda and Mother Rohini, Ekam Shakatam, on the bullock cart, Astite, seated, Rejatu, very beautiful, Krishna Rama Bhyam, Krishna and Balaram, along with their mothers. Tat Kata, of the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram, Shravana Utsuke, being situated in hearing with great transcendental pleasure. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Thus hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great pleasure. Mother Yashoda and Rohini Devi, so as not to be separated from Krishna and Balaram for even a moment, got up with them on the bullock cart. In this situation, they all look very beautiful. Purport. It appears that Mother Yashoda and Rohini could not be separated from Krishna and Balaram even for a moment. They used to pass their time either by taking care of Krishna and Balaram or by chanting about their pastimes. Thus, Mother Yashoda and Rohini look very beautiful. Omagyanatimirandasa Jananjanan Salakaya Chakshu Militamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitamyena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadadma Yandadate Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Govaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a very beautiful description here, excuse me, of the mood of the devotees, the pure devotees, especially the more advanced devotees. And here specifically Mother Yashoda and Rohini, and their tendency not to forget Krishna, not even for a moment, which is a very high standard of Krishna consciousness. But it is the goal to come to that platform to where we can constantly think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, think of his pastimes, think of his glorious activities with all the devotees. It just reminds me of when I first joined the movement in 1973 as a Grihasta. In the evening, we lived in a separate building, Grihasta building. So in the evening, our temple president made arrangements that every day in the evening, we drink hot milk and read the Krishna book every single day. All the families had to sit together. It's probably about 7 or 8 families. And we had to sit together and read the Krishna book every single day. And it was becoming quite relishable. Of course, when you first get started in Krishna consciousness, it's not that everything is so relishable. Some things you have to just do as duty. But gradually it became something we look forward to at the end of the day. It also reminds me of one brahmachari, young bhakta, when I first joined, and he actually inspired me. He said, Prabhu, it's so nice that we go all day and do service and work very hard for Krishna, and then come home in the evening and put on tilak and then hear about Krishna. It was just so sweet to hear that. So that is the real benefit of Krishna consciousness, although in the beginning we don't always see it as a benefit. We see it sometimes as a duty that we have to read these books, study these books, so on and so forth. But the process of hearing and chanting, which is given to us by Lord Krishna himself, he says in several places, Bhagavad Gita 9:14, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantas cha dridha vrataha namas yantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories. Now, this is a very important verse. I believe last night in our seminar that Vishnu Prabhu was giving on Kirtan, this verse was also mentioned. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So Lord Krishna is prescribing this, always chanting my glories. He's telling us exactly what we need to do in order to progress in spiritual life. Always chant my glories. So many memories are coming. I just was thinking earlier how when I was a brahmachari, full-time Sankirtan every day, pretty much, we'd go to the Atlanta airport. So we had a habit that every day, sometime during the day, we would stop because it's a very hectic environment, very difficult. Something like an airport, you all know because you've traveled in airports before, how crazy it is. People going here and there and the sounds and the smells. So we had a habit, we would stop, and this included devotees like Vaishya Sika Prabhu and Swavas Prabhu and all the wonderful Sankirtan devotees, Tripurari Swami, all of us. We would stop and we would try to remember what the deities were wearing that morning when we had the greeting of the deities. And we would describe the jewelry and the garlands and the color of the outfit and the type of outfit. And just the whole situation transformed. In fact, we were no longer in the airport. We were back in the temple room. We were at the lotus feet of the Lord. And we do that several times in the day. And that would stoke that feeling, remind us of that feeling that we had. Very nicely here in this second verse, verse 34. thus hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great pleasure. Mother Yashoda and Rohini Devi, so as not to be separated from Krishna and Balaram for even a moment, got up with them on one bullock cart. So that not even for one moment. So then they were remembering Krishna, remembering his pastimes. I mean, being with him actually, but thinking of him constantly. And that made them so happy. And one nice thing about this verse 34, the last sentence, in this situation, they all look very beautiful. What is that situation? Thinking of Krishna, hearing about his pastimes. Of course, they must have been beautiful anyway. Rohini, Yashodamai, exquisitely beautiful. But by hearing about Krishna, they became even more beautiful. And what does that say for us? That all of I see, there's about 18 or so devotees on this call, you're all very beautiful. Beautiful because you're hearing about Krishna. I can't see your faces, I just see your names, but you're all very beautiful. I'm seeing the picture of Bhakta Bob. Is that Hollowell? Yeah. And his smile is so beautiful. I love to see your pictures. It's a beautiful smile. Thank you for sharing that. So by remembering Krishna, devotees become beautiful. Haribo Ramsham, I see your beautiful face as well. Devotees become so beautiful. Vindhyavali, such a beautiful smile. By thinking of Krishna, because most people are morose. It is a fact. Most people are morose. They're very unhappy, but they have no way they can't trace out the source of their unhappiness. You can imagine when Narada Muni came upon Srila Vyasadeva, and Srila Vyasadeva was morose, but he was morose after having written Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedic literatures, had compiled all the Vedic literatures. Still, he was morose, unhappy, because Narada Muni said, you did not fully describe the pastimes of the Lord, the glories of the Lord. Without the glories of the Lord, there's no way that you can be happy. Sorry, my phone is ringing through my printer, so I can't cut it off. Anyway, so he was not happy. So the people in general are not happy because they're not connected with the Supreme Lord through hearing about his glories. So for us, we're practicing Krishna consciousness on whatever level that we're practicing. Sometimes we become morose, especially nowadays. It's very difficult times now, very painful, very, in some cases, just miserable. People are just so unhappy because of the effects of the coronavirus and the impact on their lives, impact on their jobs. It's like here in Atlanta the other day, we found out from one of our families that the whole family got COVID. Our dear Mataji, Mahaguna Devi Dasi, her daughter, her sister's daughters. It was just painful to hear that. Very, very painful to hear that. So I talked to her the other day and I just reminded her to listen to this and read that and things like, just to take the mind away, because I knew how difficult that was for her to go through that. And she really appreciated just being reminded of Krishna. Just think about that. You don't know which devotee is going through which situation in their lives. But just if you remind them of Krishna, I always mention how Haryasva Prabhu and myself, I see the beautiful Panchatattva. See, Jai, Panchatattva Makam Krishna. But anyway, so Panchatattva is so beautiful. And Haryasva and myself, we talk sometimes and we just talk about Krishna, and he'll quote some verses and I'll quote some verses and we'll share some different stories and pastimes. And it goes on for quite some time. And it's just the joy of our life to be able to do that, to be able to just to hear about the glories of the Lord. Because that is the real purpose of our lives. Not only the purpose, but it's the great opportunity. It is a blessing. It is incredible. I mean, if we all look back on our lives, even if we come from India, and we might have been born in some, decent families in India, but we know how distracted we were. Even Srila Prabhupada himself, he said that he was distracted after he met his Guru Maharaj in 22 or something. And then he was a young man and he got married and children and business, and he was traveling. He said, I was traveling, doing selling and all kinds of things he was doing. He said, but I never forgot my Guru Maharaj. But he said, I was distracted. In fact, in Atlanta, when he spoke on the Vyasa Puja of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he actually gave the lecture. He did the arati, he did the lecture on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's Vyasa Puja. He said, my Guru Maharaj asked me to take up this mission when I first met him. He said, I should have done it immediately. Then he said, but Maya is there, referring to himself. I should have done it immediately, but Maya is there. And we all felt that, what that meant. Prabhupada was saying I was distracted by all the things in this life. But I never forgot my Guru Maharaj. And he's always trying to get back to that point of serving his, or getting to the point of serving his Guru the way he wanted to. So in this way, by remembering Krishna and helping each other to remember Krishna, this fulfills Krishna's request, Satatam Kirtiyantamam, always chanting my glories. It's not like it's an order, but he's describing what the devotees are doing, always chanting my glories. That's why they're happy. That's why they're beautiful. That's why they're not morose. I think all of us have to admit there's some aspect of our life and some parts of our days when we're confused, maybe not so acute as being morose, but sometimes we're morose. I know sometimes I am, many times. But then when I can remember or think about, not only remember and think about, because sometimes we're not so fixed in that. So then we have a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful vehicle to help us remember. First and foremost is the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. By chanting the holy names of the Lord, the remembrance starts to come back. But then especially Srila Prabhupada's books. Srila Prabhupada's books are like, he described his purports as his emotional ecstasies. These purports that Prabhupada wrote, he said, I did not write these books. Krishna wrote these books through me. And they're my emotional ecstasies. So when we're reading Prabhupada's books, we're actually entering into his ecstasies, his nectar. Like whenever you hear Srila Prabhupada, and he's describing, like this morning I was listening to the Bhagavatam class by Srila Prabhupada, and the flow of his discussion about Krishna is not artificial. It's not like, you know, Prabhupada, it's just he's thinking of Krishna and he's relishing as he's speaking of Krishna to us. You can feel it. You can almost taste it, that he's relishing what he's saying. Mahaprabhu ki Tanarita Gita Vaditra Majam Manasora Sena. Spiritual master's relishing within his mind, Manasa Rasena, Mahaprabhu ki, the glorious pastimes of the Lord. So when Prabhupada's speaking, he's relishing. Another example, when he came to Atlanta, and everyone knows this example, you can look it up on the internet anywhere. Prabhupada's arrival address in Atlanta. It is the shortest arrival address in the history of Prabhupada with this ISKCON movement. Normally, because I heard Srila Prabhupada in Philadelphia, Haryasha Prabhu was also there, Bhakta Henry, or Bhakta, Howard. He was there. And we heard Srila Prabhupada. Because in fact, when Prabhupada arrived in Philly, it's so funny, the Atlanta devotees had just come there. We missed going to the airport. We couldn't go to the airport to meet Prabhupada. And Haryashu, as Bhakta Howard, was also there. He didn't go to the airport. So we were just there. It's just a handful of devotees. So when Prabhupada came back, we were the only few devotees there to receive him because the balance of the devotees were just coming back from the airport. So we were just a few devotees greeting Prabhupada. So when Prabhupada gave the arrival address in Philly, it was quite lengthy. I don't know, can't remember how long. Then I saw him in Chicago, that arrival address. But in Atlanta, the arrival address is about 48 or 49 seconds. If you go back and read it, you'll see it's only about 48 or 40, not even a minute. You know why? Because Srila Prabhupada, when he came in the temple room, we only had Gaurnitai deities at that time. These Gaurnitai deities in Atlanta were amazing. There are many devotees all over the world, especially devotees like Suradas with the BBT. Whenever I talk to him, he says, how is Gaurnitai doing? how is Gornitai doing? If you talk to Vaishesika, he'll tell you the same thing, because we were so just focused on Gornitai, because it was the only deities that we had. So when Srila Prabhupada came, that was the only deity in Atlanta, Gornitai, in the center of the altar. So when he saw those deities, he started speaking about Lord Chaitanya. And in fact, the whole time Prabhupada was there, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, February 28th to March 1st, he only talked about Lord Chaitanya. He did not give a Bhagavatam class. He only spoke about Lord Chaitanya. So when he gave that arrival address and he started speaking about Lord Chaitanya, Manasodasena, and started thinking about it, he broke into tears. And we were absolutely stunned. We were shocked. No one could expect that. In such a faraway place as Atlanta, Georgia, from Vrindavan and Mayapur, Prabhupada sitting there crying. And at the end, he said, he couldn't talk anymore. He tried to speak. He said, Krishna, first of all, says, surrender, Saradama Prichajamam. He said, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes no demand. And at that point, he was overwhelmed with ecstasy. And he said, just take shelter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be happy. And he left the room. We were just stunned. So Prabhupada speaking about Krishna is Prabhupada seeing Krishna, relishing Krishna, after prolonged hearing about his glories. So Krishna's giving us this instruction. It's the keys to Krishna consciousness to put in our transcendental toolbox. So whenever we become confused, we just open up our little toolbox and the verses are there, pastimes are there, remembrances are there, so many things. So Krishna, again, another verse in the same chapter 9, 34. And this verse, everyone knows, Krishna quotes, he says this twice in the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavamad bhakto mad jajimam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam mat parayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. A little bit of this purport is very beautiful. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart that Krishna is the supreme. He should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds of thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional service is practiced there. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything. That will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to Krishna lok. And then one last verse on Bhagavad Gita. I'm sorry, the same verse again spoken in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, 65. Man mana bhavamat bhakto majajimam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyo sime. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you're my very dear friend. And then Prabhupada begins by saying the most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. And on that same point, Rupa Goswami in the Nectar Devotion says, the Padma Puran recommends, and this is Srila Prabhupada's summary, somehow or other, always think of Krishna without forgetting him under any circumstances. Actually, this is the most basic of all regulative principles. For when there is an order from a superior about doing something, there is simultaneously a prohibition. When the order is that one should always remember Krishna, the prohibition is that one should never forget him. And then Prabhupada says again, within this simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete. Just think about that. Always remember Krishna, never forget. But we all know, we all have to admit that we forget Krishna constantly. Myself, it's just, I don't know, it's just difficult to think of Krishna during the day. We think of some other things. We think of the philosophy, and that's also wonderful. But actually thinking of Krishna, his threefold bending form. It's like, let me click this on for a second here. This form, this picture, we were describing this last night. This picture of Krishna, and I've heard it described many times that Srila Prabhupada said that this painting of Krishna depicts him most accurately. The color, the threefold bending form, everything about this painting, Prabhupada was so, this is so close to what, it's like a photograph of Krishna. So just thinking about this form, this beautiful form of Krishna, and Radharani's looking at him so lovingly in the beautiful forest of Vrindavan. So in this way, we can fix our mind on the Lord. Think about him constantly by hearing his glories. There's so many references and things, but I just want to share a couple more. This is from, I'll leave this one for last. On the Nectar of Instructions. These are some beautiful verses. So if you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it in a long time, please spend some time with the Nectar of Instruction. It is so amazing. So verse 7 and 8, and the Sanskrit in the Nectar of Instruction is very relishable, very poetically organized. Text 7, Shat Krishna Nama Chadita Disita Pavidya Pito Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintwadarat Anuditam Kalu Saeva Jushta Sadvikramad Bhavati Tat Garamula Hantri. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So listen to this last part. It is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting. Now, what does it mean to carefully chant? It's like the Matajis who have had babies and children, especially little babies. You carefully take care of them. I remember when I first held my son, it's crazy. My son will be 50 years old in January. I was like, what? But I remember him being this little baby because he was born premature. He was in an incubator. Now he's like 240 pounds, but he was in an incubator. And I remember the first time I held my son, this little thing in my hands. I actually have a photograph of my son when he was right before we joined the temple, because he was 2 years old when I joined. So he was like 1.5 years old, and I'm holding him, and we're standing in my old hometown apartments, and I'm just holding my son. It's the only picture I have of him like that, so carefully. So we know from examples what it means to be careful. Just like when we're driving, we should be careful. Okay, don't be, make sure when you drive, you're careful. So we know what it means to be careful. If we're cooking something for Krishna, very careful. So it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, we have this opportunity for 16 rounds every day. How careful are we when we chant? The careful chanting equates to a blissful day. My temple president, Balabhadra Prabhu, he taught us in the beginning, if you can just chant one round and hear every mantra, you'll be blissful and peaceful all day. Now, if you're honest, most of us will admit it's difficult to carefully chant and hear exactly every mantra in one round, what to speak of 16. Some of you, I'm sure, are very expert at doing that. But if you take note, you'll notice how your mind drifts and wanders off, goes here, and you have to pull it back. Whenever the mind wanders, as Krishna says, drag it back, bring it back. Bring that mind back at the lotus feet of the Lord. But we have to continually do that throughout the day, carefully. So just put that word in your mind as one of your tools. How should I chant? Sometimes devotees say, how should I chant? Chant carefully. chant carefully. Be careful when you chant. Why should you be careful? Well, if you had a baby, you would be careful. If you had something super valuable that you consider to be valuable, you would be careful. I mean, how careful are we with these things here? Our cell phones, because we don't want to crack that screen because we know how much it costs to repair. So we're just so careful. We put it in our pocket and we put it over here and we put it over there. But when we chant Hare Krishna, like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, not very careful. It's a practice. It's a practice to be careful. So he's saying we can relish. The natural relish awakens within the tongue. And then the next verse, Tanama Rupa Charitadi Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasanad Manasini Oja Tistandra Jeta Anuragi Jananugami Kalam Nayeda Kilam It Upadeshasaram. Please listen to this verse. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Golok Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So here he uses the word nicely chanting. So now we have two words in our toolbox, carefully chanting and nicely chanting. I was describing last night to the devotees on the call about kirtan. I have certain kirtan heroes. You'd be surprised that one of my heroes is Vishnu Gada Prabhu, because everyone knew about Vishnu Gada from New York, great kirtan leader. So I loved him so much. I used to love to hear and see his kirtan. But my other kirtan hero, actually, you all know about him, Achyutananda. At that time, Achyutananda Maharaj, he translated the songbook that we all have. So when I went to Mayapur the first time in 1976, I had a personal audience with him. I had made this arrangement to be able to speak with him because I wanted to get some guidance on kirtan. Like last night, Vishnu Gada was giving all this nice information about kirtan. So I went to the kirtan king, Achyutananda Maharaj, because he stayed in the Gaudiya Math. He learned all the original melodies and beautiful melodies. You should, if you don't know those melodies that he chanted, there's some cassettes out there, how to chant all those bhajans in the songbook. So I said, Maharaj, what is the secret for kirtan? And as I mentioned last night, he looked at me with disgust. Secret? Like secret? What secret? Chant nicely for Krishna. What an instruction. Everyone should take that to your heart. Chant nicely for Krishna. So it's saying here, nicely chanting. What is the secret for chanting your japa? Nicely chant. How do you do something nicely? You can do something roughly, abruptly, negligently, or nicely. You can nicely clean your house, or you can nicely put on your clothes. Like it says, residents, Yashoda and Rohini, they were dressed so beautifully, nicely dressed. So how do you nicely chant? How do you do it? I don't know. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nicely chant. All those cobwebs, all that dirt that's accumulated on the mirror of our heart and our mind becomes gradually destroyed over time. Just like Nasta Praisu Badresu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavatu Tamastoke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki. And that's describing regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the pure devotees. But Srila Prabhupada says, not just the devotee, but all the things related to Krishna. Because I was thinking that verse he says, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, we say the devotee Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. But all those things, Tadiyam, which are related to Krishna, the temple, the deities, Sankirtan, reading, that is also rendering service to the devotee, to the Lord. So we have so many resources that we can nicely meditate and serve the Lord. So then Krishna finally says here, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, mam anushmara yujacha, mayarpita mano buddhir, mam evaishya samsayaha. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, text 7. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So my meditation on this discussion today revolves around the idea of how can we do all of these things that we were just describing or just reading in the midst of all this chaos of today. There's so much chaos, madness. This is really Kali Yuga. It's just madness. The political scene, the health scene, the family scene, everything is a mess. How are we expected to be Krishna conscious in the midst of all of this? Just like I was mentioning this one Dharmataji here in Atlanta, suffering from COVID with her whole family. How is she going to be Krishna conscious? It's very difficult. That's why I'm, calling her and just trying to remind her to think of Krishna. I know it's so difficult. So we're all going through different things in our lives. Each one of us can tell the story. We can write books about what we've gone through in our lives. Each one of us have suffered so many things or currently suffering many things. But Krishna's saying, therefore, and Prabhupada, many lectures, Prabhupada takes this word therefore, and he emphasizes it. Therefore, conclusion, Arjuna, therefore, you should always think of me. All the things that are accumulating in your life, all of the trials and tribulations, therefore think of me. You want to know the solution? Think of Krishna. But then you say, well, it's so difficult to think of Krishna. Then if you chant his holy names, then it starts to manifest more naturally because he's already there within us. Krishna's already there within us. It's interesting. I have a friend that I used to sing in a group with back before I became a devotee. And it was interesting. He was an alcoholic and I was into the drug scene, different people. He had come down from Cleveland, Ohio. He was already an entertainer, recording and everything, but we were very close. I became a Hare Krishna. He became a Christian. Now he's a very successful Christian minister with a PhD. I'm thinking back, that's interesting because I know where he came from. He knows where I came from. So I wrote to him the other day on Facebook and I said, Willie, we used to call him Willie Wee. His name is Pastor Willie Williams. So I said, one of the things on my bucket list, I want to hear your lecture. I want to hear your sermon because I had never heard him speak. So I looked up one of his sermons and I was like really impressed with my buddy because he was talking about this thing of God is with you. He was almost talking about the super soul. I said, maybe he listened to me back those 40 something years ago when I talked about this. God is with you. You have to remember God is with you. And I was like, go, Willie, go. This is fantastic. Yes, Krishna is with us 24/7. And as Rupa Goswami is saying, the holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. It is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue. And his disease is destroyed gradually to the root. So that is the idea that even though the situation is so difficult now, so many problems in the world now, if we take shelter of Krishna, and like I say, it's not so easy to just remember Krishna. Like if we all stop right now, close our eyes, and try to think of the form of Krishna. Whatever that favorite form, maybe the painting that I just showed you. There's another painting which I don't have to show you now, but it's the one, it's on the front of Reservoir of Pleasure, that little booklet. And I can see it now. Krishna's standing on a lotus flower and there's 3 waterfalls behind him. It's such a beautiful little painting. You can see it on the front of Reservoir of Pleasure. And his smile, he's got these little dimples. I can see it. It's like amazing, beautiful picture. So whatever it is, whichever one that you like, think of it for just a moment. Just think of it. and just hold that in your mind. But see how difficult it just starts to fade away and go, pull it back. But if we chant the holy names of the Lord nicely every day, read Prabhupada's books nicely every day, Rupa Goswami is assuring us that the relish, the taste will come. At one point it will come. And that's what Prabhupada wanted for us. Like, you know, me being Prabhupada's disciple or son, you being Prabhupada's grandchildren, he wanted this for us. He wanted this for us like anything, that we can relish this Krishna consciousness and our lives will become perfect. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you all very much. Drona Prabhu.
Thank you, Balabhadra Prabhu. Wonderful, wonderful class. Will definitely help us with our continuing service of trying to think of Krishna. Very, very nice focus on this point. We'll take some questions. Mother Gita has her hand up.
Thank you, Prabhu.
First question.
Balabhadra Prabhu for a wonderful lecture. I wanted to know, is there a difference between chanting nicely and carefully, or is it the same?
Very, very interesting question. It's almost like a couple of different flavors. When you're eating your prasadam, you have this, you have that, it's all prasadam, but it's different flavors. So then we carefully chanting and nicely chanting are similar. Nicely chanting, I'm trying to think of an example. I gave the example about carefully chanting, just like if you're carefully handling something and then nicely doing something. Let's think about that for a second. How do you nicely do something? I don't know. Anyone have an idea how to nicely do something? What do you say, Drona?
You plan it. Usually when you do something nicely, you give some attention or planning to it. There's some premeditation on that activity. Sometimes you get support or consensus among other people that are also doing that activity or have experience doing that activity.
Yeah. That's interesting. You know, and as you were saying that, like sometimes the boys will say, that was nice, Prabhu. That was nice, Mataji. And generally when they say that, it's like you really put your heart into it. You know, that was really nice what you said. That was really nice what you did. Carefully is also like that. You can carefully do things, but then when you do it nice, it's almost like there's a different flavor to that. That's what I'm perceiving from that. Thank you so much, Gita, for bringing it up. Because there is a subtle, in my mind, I can see a subtle distinction. It's just a different flavor. But it's like nicely. Anyone else? So what does it mean to nicely chant the holy names or nicely engage in devotional service? Hari. Yes, Mr. Ben, I see your hands up.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Hare Bol. When I think of chanting nicely, I think of making sound nicely. Like I check my voice, if I sound nice or no. I try to slow down and try to be nice. That's how I do. I make it sound nicely. That's what because I speak very fast. So it's speaking my ability also, and I try to do it nicely that way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mr. Venda, I saw you took off, man.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Please
I see you you nicely put on your tilak, so.
Thank you so much. Please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. It's wonderful to see you this morning. So in reference to, I had a question also, but in reference to nicely chanting the Maha Mantra, it takes me to hearing Srila Prabhupada on cassette chanting. It takes me to hearing my Guru Maharaj Bhakti Tirtha Swami chanting in the temple room. And it means, you know, do something carefully, do something nicely. In both of those instances, in my mind's eye and my ear, I can hear love. I can hear, as Dronacharya Das said, attentiveness, which is, one of the things we should be doing in everything that we do for Krishna, and, just daily. And if that's forgotten for some reason or problem, then there should be the goal to come back to that. But I hear and see the ability to take the time and the care and the attention to pronounce each name with, not slowly, unless that's just what you want to do, but with enough patience to enunciate each syllable. I have a linguistic ear. I learned, I was fluent in French and Spanish, and of course English by the time I was in 4th grade, being raised in Massachusetts and educated there. So there are syllables to the Maha Mantra, just like when we're learning to read whatever language we're learning. So taking that time to enunciate and put the ah and the ha and the ra and the re in each aspect of it, with care and with attention, to me that's really an example of it.
Very nice.
As I can see.
But
I have a question, if you don't mind. And the question was, your friend who became Christian.
Willie Wee.
Willie Wee, yeah? What a fun name. In our beautiful path of bhakti, there's the knowledge that we are not sectarian. This path of bhakti is not sectarian. And my question is, how can devotees really, what scriptures or what information can you give to help people really acknowledge that in their hearts? Because we come with conditionings. There's so many isms. There's so many ways that people are contaminated and they may not even know. So my Guru Maharaj would always say, if you're going to be Christian, be a good Christian. Muslim, be a good Muslim. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't respect other people's aspects of worshiping God, because we worship God as Krishna.
Yes, that's a good point. Your Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I arranged for him one time in Atlanta an interfaith Sunday feast program. And I have the picture, and I'll send it to you and Drona, because I know you're both disciples of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and also to Anasuya and Parikshit. This picture is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj sitting on the asasan, and there's a Muslim, there's one of the founders of the Black Hebrew Israelites.
Yes.
And there's a couple of other different religious people. I told this before, the Muslim representative was a very controversial figure. I knew him very well because we were on an interfaith group together. He was under investigation by the FBI and this and that. So in front of our temple, all the way down the street, he had bodyguards. It was intense. It was like every 20 feet, there was a bodyguard to protect him. But I knew him. He was a wonderful guy. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, the way he spoke to them, you can look on their faces. What was his rabbi? Minister Ram, that's his name. Minister Ram from the Black Hebrew Israelites. He was looking at Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj almost like relishing every word that Maharaj was saying, describing Krishna consciousness and the non-sectarian nature of true religion. So really, if we listen, if we're listening when people, like my friend when he spoke, and I listened, and what he said really touched me. That's happened many times. And I've heard Christians speak or Muslims speak or whatever, and they say something which resonates. I appreciate it. We should not be threatened or feel uncomfortable if someone from a different faith is saying something. I don't have the quote in front of me, but I can sort of give you a sense of it from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And I quoted this at a Christian church one time. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if you find yourself in someone's temple, church, or mosque, those are the words he used. Temple, church, or mosque. You should think like this. I may not be able to participate because I don't know all the different rituals, but I pray to God as I know him, that my love will increase for the Lord as I know him by seeing this man's expression of devotion. That is so powerful. You see someone else's expression of devotion, and that should enhance your devotion. It should not threaten you. Because you know what that threatening feeling is? You're not sure about your decision to be a devotee. I'm very serious about this. You're so unsure about what decision you made that you think, well, maybe that's better. Maybe if they're right, maybe I'm wrong. There's no question of right or wrong. Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter. We just check to see, have you developed the symptoms of love of God? Last example, at another interfaith program that we did at our Panihati festival, and I can see the stage right now. Jayapataka Maharaj, my Muslim friend, Christian friend, all these different people, I brought them together. Several years we did that. So this Muslim imam, this is what he said to the devotees. All the devotees are sitting in the audience under the tent. This is what he said to the devotees. He said, I have never in my life experienced so much love as I'm feeling today amongst all of you. And devotees went crazy, like, Haribo. Just by being with the devotees. Yashoda and Rohini became beautiful. They were already beautiful, but more beautiful by remembering Krishna. So the devotees, being Krishna conscious, that love transcended all religious boundaries. It went all the way to this Muslim imam who felt that love. So that is the foundation of it. So thank you very much for that. Anyone else? Real quick. Any other questions? Sorry, Gita, did we cover some of that? About the difference between nicely and carefully, Gita? Okay.
I have one thought, Balabhadra Prabhu, that
yes,
about doing something nicely. It came to me as you were talking there. I'd like to share. When I first started working, my boss had told me that he said, you're here for 8 hours. He says, and whether you do it nicely or not nicely, you're here for 8 hours. So you might as well do it nicely because it's the same amount of time.
That's true.
And then you walk away with feeling a sense of accomplishment and that you've done it. You did your best. And I took that principle and I, as much as I can, try to apply it to japa and my devotional.
That's true.
That you have to do it. You're doing it anyway. Whether you're going to be spaced out for 2 hours or you're going to be focused on Krishna for 2 hours, whether you're going to be reading for a half hour or spaced out reading a half hour, you might as well do it nicely because you're going to be investing roughly the same amount of time.
Yes.
And you feel so much more fulfillment in doing that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It also nicely, excuse me, and carefully, if you're doing something nicely, obviously you're being careful. So I think they work together. So doing it nicely necessitates being careful when you do it. You can't do something nicely and be like haphazard and negligent. Doing it nicely requires it, to be careful when you're doing it. So that's very nice. Everything's connected. Any other questions?
Hand up.
Prabhu, I just want to ask.
Vindhyavali.
Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. I just want to ask, sometimes I just want to do in my, if I go into music mood, I put in that music way, the Hare Krishna mantra. And if I do myself alone also, I do that. And I think Krishna might be listening to this and he loves the music. I feel sometimes, oh God, how come he's not playing the flute with me? So I feel that way. And then, I don't want to rush up because I had to finish the 16 rounds. I don't want to rush. I just want in my own music tune. And I just want to go like that. And if sometimes, my mind goes back and I'll bring it back to Krishna's form, like Krishna is eating butter or something. He's running away from Yasodamai. Like that, I bring those pictures, like you're saying that Krishna, that picture you showed us. So I don't know. I can't do it very fast. I don't want to do it. I can, but I don't want to do it. At the same time, I know by the end of the day, oh God, I have 2 more rounds left, you know,
Mm.
I feel. But still, when I start and I feel going to the music mode, and again, I want to do it my own pace. But
so
I finish it, 16 rounds. But that makes a lot of it. And then I think that, you know, if we do it melodiously and if you do it nice in the sense, and I feel that way. I don't know whether that is correct or not.
No, it's like you're saying, sometimes at the end of the day, you have 2 rounds left or 3 rounds left. It's wonderful.
I'll finish it.
Yeah, you know, but the point is this one devotee, Ramanath Sukha Prabhu, he was in Philadelphia some years ago, but he was a head cook in Atlanta. So he was under so much pressure at one point. And then he went to Vridananda Maharaj to get some clarity. He said, Maharaj, I can't chant all my japa in the morning because I have to take care of the deities. I have to do this, I have to do that. I end up chanting in the middle of the day. I end up chanting at the end of the day. And Maharaj, without even hesitating, said, it's okay, Prabhu. Whenever you chant, chant nicely. If it's in the morning, if it's in the afternoon. I remember there's a picture in my mind of another devotee, Hari Charna Prabhu, who was our treasurer. And he would sit in the temple room around noontime, so peacefully, just chanting his japa, because he had a lot of service in the morning. So he was just chanting his japa. And that image still sticks with me, how peaceful he was chanting. So whenever you chant, you know, and so your point about singing melodiously, I was laughing because that's what I do. I make music and I put Hare Krishna mantra. In fact, I'm looking at my guitar. Later on the day, I have some ideas. I want to put Hare Krishna mantra with some nice music. I love doing that. It's just very sweet. And that's actually my goal, is to popularize the chanting of the Maha Mantra in the urban communities in ways that they can appreciate. Of course, people all appreciate just simple kirtan. Like Prabhupada said last night, right, Drona? He said, when I started, I didn't even have mridanga. I had that little drum. He called it dundubi. But it was a bongo drum. I had this little drum. And Brahmananda was dancing and Kirtananda was dancing and da-da-da-da-da. So yes, I like what you said, Mataji. Melodiously singing, chanting, that's so nice. So continue doing what you do. It's putting a smile on your face, and that's what's important. You look beautiful.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
We have two more.
Yes, no problem.
Both Sita and Gita.
Sita and Gita.
Sita and Gita. Very
that's good. That's good combination.
My sincere apologies. I forgot to unmute myself.
No problem.
I was talking to myself. Thank you so much for, I didn't know that chanting nicely and carefully would bring up so much nectar from Mitra Vrinda Mataji and also Dronacharya Prabhu. So it was very, very nice to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gita. Sita?
I just wanted to say, when you talked about chanting nicely and carefully, and again, it's my Monday, you know, I'm not so good about this, but what came to mind is, if you hear every syllable, that's carefully. And then if you're following, and if you're making sure you're following all the, you know, well, at least trying not to make and following the 10 offenses that, you know, Prabhupada wanted us to do, you know, that'll be nicely, because you're adding that level to your chanting. And this is coming from Haryasha Prabhu's classes. He has been really drilling it inside our heads. So that came to mind, but, you know, everything together. You know, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, so let me just read one last time this part of the verse from the Nectar of Instruction. It is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. It is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting, and the names are sweet, even though we don't taste it. The names are sweet. Then the natural, see, it's nothing artificial that we're trying to do to ourselves, okay? It is already there. It's just a jaundice. And Prabhupada describes that with jaundice, the only cure is sugar candy. And you take that sugar candy because in jaundice, you can't taste anything nice and sweet. So when you start to taste the sweetness again, you know the jaundice is gone. So when we know, we'll know when we've made that proper level of advancement. Prabhupada says that lustiness and greediness goes away. You're no longer lusty, no longer greedy. We know. And we also know that gradually we're losing that lust and that greed. We all know that. We can feel it. Gradually it's falling away. So regularly attending the Bhagavatam class, rendering service to the devotee. And Prabhupada says rendering service to the devotee means all the things related to Krishna. Temple, serving the deity, so many things like that, all related. Then all of us, gradually, these things will become resolved in our hearts. And then we'll all together just be so ecstatic about Krishna that we'll only want to talk about Krishna. This is the deal, everybody, that we've got to get to the point to where all this nonsense in the world is just part of what we have to do. Arjun, you go fight, but think of me. This is part of what we have to do to deal with the world, but that should not distract us from Krishna. Nothing should distract us from Krishna. We should not distract each other from Krishna. We should help each other remember Krishna as much as we can. Let's practice that. Helping each other remember Krishna in spite of all the circumstances of our life. Hare Krishna.
What a beautiful message, Balabhadra Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. I'm giving it to myself. That's what I prayed this morning. Please let me be inspired from this discussion today so I can be more Krishna conscious. So.
Okay, we're right at 9 o'clock. I wanted to remind all the devotees that today is Ekadasi. I don't know in Atlanta if it's Ekadasi. I know in Philadelphia it is.
Yes, it is. Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes different places, it's a different timing. So a day that we can focus on first, fast from beans and grains at a minimum, and then also try to give a little extra attention to our devotional lives, a little extra chanting, a little extra reading, a little extra focus in some way, thinking about Krishna. We'll rejoin tomorrow. Actually, tonight we have, if you're interested in learning Brahma Samhita, Vishnu Giral Prabhu is teaching that at 6:45. And then at 7 o'clock, we have our Srila Prabhupada Leela book study. So please join us if you can this evening, starting at 6:45 at the same Zoom channel. And then we'll reconvene again tomorrow for Srimad Bhagavatam class. And if you're interested in chanting japa with the devotees, starting at 6:30. Hare Krishna, everyone, and Balabhadra Prabhu, again, our gratitude
Thank you, Prabhu.
And for sharing your wisdom.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Balabhadra Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.